So welcome everybody. We're really happy to see so many people in this room today, and I'm even more happy that you didn't run away when you saw this slide. We just heard somebody talking at lunch, and I think it was in the 5th row.
Yeah, no? Over there.
Somewhere over there, and they said the most time we spend fighting against processes. So we happened to hear that at the other table, and that's what we used to do too. Who is we? Short introduction. This is Steffen Behn. Steffen, he's my colleague and CTO from the Kartenmacherei, and in his free time, petrolhead. He kept his passion from his early times as product manager at BMW. And I'm Tina Dreimann. I'm currently a business and agile coach at the Kartenmacherei. So it's not a consulting company. I used to be a consultant like 10 years ago, but I'm happy to be working in the company with the teams. And I also entered e-commerce as a product manager about 6 years ago now. It is. And this is what we used to work with, so thanks for not running away. And the scary fact is that behind every of these red boxes, you find another one of these processes. But to look at it in detail, also more than 2 years ago, we were already working in small agile teams. So they had a small size. They were even able to choose their own names. So we had the unicorns. What else did we have?
Shadow Ops.
We had. So they all had their own names. They all had their digital product manager or product owner. They worked with a backlog, so it sounded very agile already. However, the product manager, he wasn't really a product owner. He was rather a Gandalf, like really managing the processes, not really able to make his own decisions, but rather like trying to fight things and having to take the first one that came in, which was decided by, I think, 10 people in roadmap meetings that took quite some time, and it just didn't feel right yet, and so surprise, it failed.
It's really nice that you don't have a pusher.
Okay, so I can't laugh today. That's going to be hard. Yeah, it failed, and we learned two things mainly. The first thing is that you shouldn't escalate decisions just because the discussions about these decisions are hard. And the second thing is that you shouldn't shield really smart people from decisions that affect them. So if you do that, that's simply plain stupid. Because all my dev colleagues are really smart, and I really value them, and to not even let them make them part in the decision or in the discussions was simply not the right thing to do.
Yeah, so
that's what we want to convey today as a message. Firstly, really important, we want to show you that there's an agile and another agile out there. So there are two different ways of doing agile, and like just because you do agile doesn't mean you are agile. And the second message is we really want to encourage you to start experimenting, like even with small experiments in the way we were going in the last year, because it's really worth it.
And maybe as a side note, whenever you have a complicated process, the answer most of the times is not a more complicated process. So who are we as a company? I will do it really quick. We do cards. The people who speak German, it's not a big surprise. We don't do Google Maps kind of cards. We do greeting cards, like wedding invitations, Christmas cards. Whoever needs some Christmas cards, we're there. We are 100 something above 120 people, 3 locations in Germany, Munich, somewhere outside Munich where the old headquarters is, and in Hamburg. And we were founded by my brother in 2010, so we're a family business, no venture capital. We're very happy about that. Owner family owned. And the good thing is We had one problem from the very beginning, and we had it all over again every year whenever we talked about product management. And we, at some point, I think it was somewhere in 2013, we realized what the complexity in our head was, that we had like a combination out of two products, because we on one hand really have a hardware product. It's not a cool phone or anything, but it's a card. And on the other hand, we have the digital product, because we're the only ones selling our product in our online shop, right? No surprise there. But it was always the question, from where comes the innovation? Does it come from something we called, or still call, print product management? Or does it come from something most of you guys know as POs, digital product managers, how we call them in our company. So we always had this symbiosis, and we always had a very complex structure, because we were always a small company, but we had this lots of functions. We were not just building one app and you have 6 or 7 functions and then you have lots of people per function, but we actually had lots of functions. I mean, at one point we had graphics people, one for cards, and one group of graphics people for the website. So it's just crazy, right? Complete specialization. But yeah, that's where we were. And that's where Tina jumps in.
One funny fact about this picture is that if you try to search for our DevOps, they're like all in one place.
There are no DevOps yet there.
Not yet.
I mean, at that point, mostly they didn't do any ops. So yeah, but there's one developer down here, but the rest is far in the back, hidden behind the rest of the team, I would say.
Yeah. And yeah, we come back to that later. Beam back to go really miles back. 1 year ago, I was still head of shop management, or it's more than 1 year ago. And I was really frustrated because in order to do something, I didn't have a team. So we already worked with quarterly objectives, and I could write something down, but I had to talk to at least 7 other functions in order to really do something. So I was highly frustrated, and so were others.
For example, Anna. Anna I'm always saying was. She is one of our longest employees. She started even before me. She started in 2011 as our 3rd employee. And back then she started in graphics and order checking, and nowadays she's one of the print product managers. And Anna came to my brother and me and she said, like, I'm really frustrated. And she said it in German. We translated it, but that's the words she used. I really want to be as fast and have as much fun as I did in the past. What did she mean by that? She meant in the early days when we were 4 people, we had one outsourced developer who just did what we told him to do, and everything was so easy. Decisions were taken right away, and everything was so quick and fast, right? So that's what she meant. And unfortunately, or luckily nowadays, I would say, she wasn't the only one, like Tina said. So there were a couple of things which really frustrated Anna and frustrated us. So for me, I will start with the most important one. That's the one Tina already mentioned. Every tough decision was escalated to the top. So it was always the question coming up then, because different teams wanted to have different things. And at some point, my brother and me were asked, okay, are the developers going to do this first, or are they going to do this first? And then we had said, honestly, we have no clue, but we have to take a decision, because we really didn't know the details anymore, but nobody else was able to figure it out because people had different priorities, right? Then we were in a situation where we always had something in between 60 and 100% growth year over year. And obviously also down to becoming market leader in 2013, 14. But anyhow, the growth stalled. So we were a growth company, and we only were facing growth something around 20%. And we didn't come up with great new things anymore. It was like these small little steps and nothing big. The process you saw earlier, it was an iterative process, right? What I mean with that is that it changed every 2 weeks, and it just got worse and worse. So we reorganized. Tina, I don't know how many job titles you had in that 6 months of you starting at Kartenmacherei, but we thought we have to somehow cluster the departments different and put people in different teams, etc.
And we even tried to move people from Munich to Hamburg because we thought it's necessary that the product management sits right next to the developers. So we thought, hey, that's the right answer, but it wasn't. But what did you do then?
Based on our product, we also had another issue. We were always chasing seasonalities. So, I mean, Christmas is coming up ahead. I think we have never been as fast or as ready with Christmas as we were this year, but we will come to that. So we were always late. Christmas, we were already... And during Christmas, we basically already had to work on wedding season, which starts around New Year. But we never managed to do that because it was the same teams working on everything and they were always late. And for me, the most frustrating part as a person, because I'm a people person, it was frustrated employees. So we're doing a quarterly employee survey. How likely is it that you would recommend our company to your friends and family as an employer? And what we saw that the longer people are with us, the less likely they are to recommend us. Then you start talking to people and you hear, that's normal. It's everywhere like that. People are very motivated at the beginning and then reality kicks in and it gets more frustrating over time. But we really didn't want to accept that, right? Like I already mentioned, we were changing all the time. We just had to realize that we weren't changing in the right direction. So we had to take a step back. There was some wine involved. Basically my brother and I started to read a lot and we started talking to other companies because surprise, surprise, we were not the only ones in this situation and we were definitely not the ones up front with the greatest and nicest ideas. So we talked a lot to other companies. We did a road trip through Germany, talked to a couple of companies in Berlin, in Munich, and in Hamburg.
Yeah, suddenly we didn't see you anymore.
Yeah, some people complained about that. Some others were happy. And we got stuck with one book. I don't want to mention a dozen books, but I want to mention one book because it really also struck a nerve inside my head. It's called What Really Motivates Us, Drive, from Daniel Pink. And he basically comes down to 3 core pillars for motivation. And at that point, we still thought that we have to motivate people when we actually just didn't have to demotivate them. It turns out it's actually quite simple. Just get out of their way. So what did he say? He said, first, people need a purpose, right? That's the word of the last 2 years, I would say. Everybody knows what it's about. But he also clearly said autonomy is the second pillar, and the third one, and that's one which is not so often mentioned, is he calls it mastery. So it's basically the inner drive to get better at what you do as a person and as a team. And when you put all that together, you realize you come to one very clear point that all these 3 pillars you can only achieve in small, autonomous and self-organized teams. Because whenever you make a team bigger, whenever you make a process deciding for what's going on, then people cannot anymore live their motivation, which they actually have inherent, right? So yeah, that's what we tried to do and
started to do.
Yeah, what we tried to and start to do. So again, we were still very narrow-minded at that time. We had a history of lots of hierarchy and lots of hierarchy for a small company as ours, at least.
But hierarchy was also a success factor, because if you are a startup, you're driven by mainly one person. That's the key success factor in the beginning. True.
Yeah,
which you have to get away from the bigger you get.
I tend to look back in a negative way. I know that. Arne told me that. So what did we do? We definitely didn't want to do a 180-degree switch on one day. We were definitely too scared to do that. So we decided to do small experiments. And one I want to mention. So what you see there is simply a triangle. That's our big hierarchical pyramid of a company. And we decided to do with a couple of people some experiments on autonomy and on basically cross-functional getting together. So what did we do? As one example is we sent 2 developers, 2 service people, 1 product manager, print and 1 digital, to our printing company for 2 days because we wanted to tackle reclamations. So we were very concerned about our reclamation rate. At that point, we had 0.6% reclamation rate, which lots of people say it's good. For us, we say we could still improve it. And what they did in 2 days, literally 2 days, without having any other thing than that bigger purpose to just reduce that. They reduced it by almost 50% in 2 days by just talking together, coming up with their own things and implementing them right away. And that for us was one of the biggest enablers for our brains to open up our minds even further, I would say.
And then we actually decided to turn 180 degrees in 1 day. So we did do the big bang, and in November last year, we took all the, I would say, the product organizations, so everybody creating value before the product is sold. So we still didn't do anything agile with our service teams, which come afterwards. But with 50 people, we organized half-a-day workshop to reorganize in fully cross-functional teams. And we were inspired by Spotify. So our new teams, which were formerly the functions, are now called chapters. So that is Spotify. And we have squads, which are cross-functional. And the difference now to before is that we used to have 13 of these. So we really reduced complexity highly. But the special, like what makes us different at Kartenmacherei is that in these cross-functional teams that create value for the customer, we don't only have a product manager and developers, but we have like the full spectrum of capabilities you need to create value. And that includes also marketing, that includes design, and also editorial. And both of the product management guys. And also different to teams you're used to, I would say, agile teams you're used to. If you're in a scrum team, you have a product owner. We decided against it. So we said the 3 business chapters, they'd have to do the prioritization because they all need everybody. And they have to find out amongst themselves what is the right thing to do as a next step, what has the biggest impact of every possibility there is. And interestingly, that's not, not interesting, but it's not that easy, and we wanted to avoid that we give one of the persons, for example, we give the digital product management the new lead, and then he runs over the others, which also need input.
I mean, we know that the product owner, by definition, is not a hierarchical position, but let's face it, as soon as he prioritizes solely the backlog, in lots of situations it turns out that he actually overrules proper decision-making in terms of legacy, for example, by developers.
Mm-hmm. And the second part is how did we do it? So the first one, reduce complexity. The second step for us was to find the right cut. And that's where the glass of wine came in. Luckily, Christoph and Steffen had a good nose for that, and they had talked to many companies, yes. So one cut we chose at the beginning was the customer. Because we have really a big variety of categories, and we made sure that our teams are focused on our customer groups, which was in the beginning. We had moms, we had new ones, we had silver surfers, the celebrators, and many more, which we come later. And like the third thing, what's important to do to make this a success is that you do it with a team. So we could have also said, okay, Emmanuel, he's really good in this, and he just got married, so he needs to get to the newlyweds. But we really did this one big day with a team, and everybody got to decide themselves where they are in the future. And we were extremely surprised.
We were scared, first of all. I was scared.
Okay, we were.
I admit it. I was scared.
Steffen was really scared. I was a little bit scared, but we were all surprised when it just took 1 hour, because we had half a day reserved, and
over 2 locations.
Over 2 locations, Hamburg and Munich, because we have offices in 3 locations, and yeah, you realize it's easier for everybody to accommodate the new situation if you decide what to do next and where to be in the future. So that went really well, and it also showed that all of us, we're quite aware of how good we are and what we are good at.
So the idea, to nail that again, I mean, the idea which you see here, New Words Moms Celebrations, was really to group them by a customer group and give the team the ability to really talk to the customer and deliver what the customer needs from start to end, excluding service. But all besides that, so that they didn't have to agree with anybody or anything. They should talk to people, obviously, but they come up with their ideas. They decide with developers together what would really make sense to build, and they just build it and ship it.
So now, and we promised unfiltered and raw in our talk. So we had ups and downs. We were very honest on that. And Steffen is the worst, the first to, not the worst.
Thank you.
I was going to say the first to take his pants down now, and I will do later, but on the positive side.
Right, I have to do the bad things. But
it's learning.
I'm not going to use the cliche. They are not really bad because we learned from them, but we did. So anyhow, I will go through the negative stuff. I want to. There were way more than the 3 I want to focus on, but I want to make it easier for you guys. So first of all, conflict. I will get into detail with that. Maybe one of you guys has already, or a couple of already have an idea. Maybe you saw on the chart before we had an infrastructure team. That was definitely a fuck up. Sorry. And the third, and that was, and is still the hardest, long-term versus short-term prioritization. So let me go into detail with conflict. And I will use that cliche. You put introverted developers together with extroverted marketeers, and you let them decide together. So what happens? The marketeers talk a lot, and the developers maybe talk in between themselves, but they just say, it's such a shit what they're doing. That's what can we do, right? They just want one feature after another, and we actually have so much legacy, we have to fix that first. But yeah, they don't know stuff. So that's exactly what happened. We didn't have the conflict necessary because actually the cross-functional aspect only gets to shine when the conflict is surfaced and discussed and solved. Because the conflict is positive only as long as you surface it. If the people stay in sub-teams and don't discuss something, then you actually need a product owner who might see that and interact. But we didn't have that, so we expected from the team that they actually have this discussion. And that didn't happen often enough. So 5 dysfunctions of a team is there a very good framework or a book to read and help, because in the end it's about trust, that also people who are not that extroverted start to come up with the stuff they really have in mind. So yeah, we didn't work on the legacy for, I would say, the first 6 months, and we have a lot of legacy.
For 2 quarters, it wasn't in the quarterly goals, for example, of moms. There was no topic in it. It was just business topics.
Yeah. I mean, imagine that. A squad team has quarterly objectives, and even though we still have a Magento system somewhere beneath our shiny new e-commerce platform, there was no topic to actually get rid of more parts of that. So it's really dangerous. So next thing up is infrastructure squad. So the idea was good. Didn't work out that well. So what was it? It was a team supposedly working more on the legacy part in the bigger terms. So they really tackle bigger projects. They also support the other squads on getting things out there with our releases, because we don't have every system in a state where we can easily release whenever we want. The new ones, yes, but not the old ones. So they need some kind of support, because some releases, deployments are really tedious. And they were also supposed to actually strengthen the core technologies we were using. But what it turned out to be, because we realized they didn't have any single real purpose, they had a mix of several purposes. They didn't have a real customer. They were just there. They couldn't build up any own vision. And in the end, they just turned out to be exactly this, completely overloaded. They only worked on bugs because every other squad said, if we find this bug, we have an infrastructure team and we can push it over there. So people were not actually doing exactly what we were intending, coming up with ideas, building them, and also then maintaining them. We had exactly the opposite. Everybody threw over the responsibility to the infrastructure squad. So it was like a catch-all team, and that definitely didn't work out. And the good thing is, and I don't know if you mentioned it later, but the good thing is that the infrastructure team dissolved itself. So that was a very good example for autonomous decisions. They just came up to us and said, it's really not working. We should move across the other squads and strengthen them and not keep on doing this system or this setup which doesn't work. And last but not least, I want to talk a minute about long-term versus short-term. So again, we were a company before having these big roadmap processes, and we had a year behind us, 1.5 years. We were completely rebuilding our shopping platform from scratch, from zero, without any frameworks or anything. So it was a bigger project with a quick first release, but then a big focus on that. So we told a lot of people, you cannot have your small stuff because we're working on something big. Mm-hmm. So importance versus urgency. So now this, right? Everybody, especially the product managers, print and digital product managers, they were able to decide again. And they had so many nice ideas, small ideas. So that's exactly what they did. They focused firstly on all these low-hanging fruits, which are nicely to be done. And they don't have any single real impact, at least nothing you really see in the numbers or which really gets us forward. It's small and easy things to be done. So to give you a very practical example, let's say there comes up a bug. So what you can do, in my point of view, if you say it really simple, you can do 3 things. You can fix the symptom. That's what happened mostly. What you should do at least is fix the actually underlying problem. And if you're already there and you're in a legacy system, at least refactor it and also write a test, right? We never said don't do that, but the squads decided not to do it because they said we don't have time for that. And that was like, for a long time, we had so many conversations about exactly that. We don't have time for that. Who says that? Like, why do you think that? We decided to build 1.5 years something which was only necessary because we focused so long on building next features instead of taking care of legacy. So why do you think anybody would want you to just quickly fix the bug instead of getting rid of the actual problem? But enough negative stuff. Tina, please enlighten us with the positive things.
Yeah, the fun part is that's something the team told us. So we did retros in all the squads to collect feedback on how we did, on our criteria why we changed. So we had a list of things we changed, for example, to increase the collaboration. We changed the teams to have more focus. We changed to get innovation. We changed to get speed back and also to get happy teams, the team motivation back. And what was interesting now is when we did this self-assessment of the team, we got better on all of them, which really surprised me. So really, before and after, they, through all the topics, said we are better now, which already makes me very happy. But I also want to focus on 3 things that particularly are recommendable if you do this, or why you should do this. And the first one is definitely the closer collaboration between the teams, so that a team across functions focuses on results. And before we were in this cross-functional team setup, you always had the blaming going on. The stupid developers, they are so slow, but I did everything right.
I had the perfect story written down.
I had the perfect story written down. I already have my designs ready, but they are too slow. So it was always a out-group and in-group. Like, I'm doing everything right, but they are so slow and they are bad and everything. Like, if they are in one team together, they get firsthand, like, why something doesn't work or why something doesn't happen, because they talk to each other on a daily basis. And the funny thing is, if they work continuously over 6 months, they even realize that it's necessary to refactor. So there's one of my favorite retros we ever did with the moms teams, was where suddenly everybody said, okay, if we want to get faster, if we want to build products on a regular basis, we have to go back and change the system. And that was like, wow, okay, now everybody is behind this and we can decide to do this. So that's the first thing that really impressed me. The second thing is our focus. I already told you that we have several customer groups, and the difficulty amongst the customer groups is we have different seasonalities. So there's Christmas for our private Christmas cards, but then suddenly wedding invitation starts, and we were always too late, and it was so frustrating because once you're done with something, you're already moving to communing, but you're too late for this, and then you have to move to wedding thank you cards, and you can never really get into the things and build something for this specific customer. And now the teams really have the focus to take care, and we were ready for Christmas. Almost.
way more ready than ever before.
But last year, before we changed the setup, we were even now still working on category pages for Christmas calendars. And that's simply not a good thing to do if you want to do business. And the third reason to change into cross-functional teams, like that really own the value chain, is for me the motivation. So the feedback we got from all our team members or colleagues is that they are much more motivated now because they have ownership, and in addition to the ownership, they also have like a broader spectrum to develop is the wrong word, for personal growth. Because you remember that before we changed, we really had specialized functions. So there was even shop management in addition to product management, and now we build profiles or roles that are much broader. And a marketeer that is doing online marketing can also do the emailings, for example, and is really responsible for the whole spectrum and can learn new things, which is fun. Yeah, that's my favorite. Anybody
about the requirements?
Anybody has kids here? Then if you don't know that, I really recommend it. So there's the growth versus the fixed mindset for me is the base if you want to make this a success. You will be more successful in this new team setup if you have a strong team with a growth mindset. And a growth mindset means that I don't see challenges as threat, and that I don't see feedback as, oh, it's bad for me, but I have to be open to feedback. I have to tackle new challenges, and it's a really good concept. If you have kids as well, the difference between I can't do it and I can't do it yet.
So it's very non-German, I would say. The growth mindset.
He's German.
I'm
Yeah, and also Google management training works with exactly that. So we are still working on as a team how we can get better and better at this, but it's something that is really important if you want self-governing teams.
Right. I used autonomy again.
That is okay.
We decided not to use the word autonomy anymore in the company because since a couple of months, autonomy in Hamburg has critical meaning, black masked people throwing stones. So we decided to talk about self-governing teams more than autonomy. Right. We need to be all self-governing right now.
And so the action to you is never stop exploring, do little experiment to change your systems as well, but also we don't stop exploring. So there are already a couple of things actually plenty of things that we iterated since we've done the big move last year, and you have good examples. What should I tell them?
There's a couple of, actually I came into the beauty of working with a team directly as part of the team again over the last 2 months, something. Should have taken a month. It took 2 months. So what we did was we realized that not everything can be done in those customer-focused teams, and we were trying to throw too much of a bigger legacy topics into the quarterly objectives of customer teams, and we realized that we also should think about doing actual tech product teams. Additionally, so that they can actually develop their own vision, something like a shop platform team. And we're experimenting with that. So it goes again back to the growth versus fixed mindset. Last time we gave that talk, a person asked us how much resistance was there, and the biggest resistance there was okay, but afterwards we're done with changes, right? And the one and only answer to that can always just be no, never. If you want to stop, please move to another company, because it's not going to change. It's not going to stay as it is, and it has already changed since fall last year a couple of times. Infrastructure by itself, and now we're doing other experiments. But the core stays the same. We want to cut the teams in a way that where the most communication happens, that those people should be in one team, and cross-functionality doesn't mean throw all functions you have into one team, but all functions you need. And to
make sure that all the functions you need are in that team.
Yeah, right. It comes from both sides. But also make sure that the teams don't grow too fast, and make sure that they stay small. So one newer fail, which is not in there, was that mom's team somehow, don't ask me how, but they turned out to be 15 at some point when we actually had a limit of 10. So not everything already works in self-governing teams. But now they are smaller again.
Even by themselves, they also started to realize that's too big. So they were running in almost, we're not doing Scrum because we don't have a product owner, but in a large scale Scrum. So you had like different teams which came had their own dailies, came back together again, smaller task force. So even within their group of 14 people, they already started building smaller cells by themselves, because they realized with 14 people doing everything, discussing everything, just doesn't make sense.
Right. And before you come with all your questions, we promise we will get to that picture. So just a little story behind that picture. It was last year, the day or the evening after we had this whole workshop and the big open space about autonomous teams, and it was before we went off to our team event, our summer event, and this is the picture of this year's summer event. And the message we want to give is that you will find developers everywhere now. And it might be a coincidence, but the whole team is completely different in terms of mindset and integration cross functions, I would say.
Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence, because we managed to include the diversity much more. So the teams now, the moms team has a very strong identity now, and in there's every functionality we have.
Right. Do we have a question slide? Yes, we do have a question slide. So quick challenge. Last time we did this talk, we used a Google tool to collect questions, and I was not supposed to say that, right? And we had lots of questions, and this time we do the test tool versus personal audience. People can just ask, so we didn't pay anyone to ask the first question, so we hope that somebody raises their hand and asks the first question and breaks the ice.
I can pay with stickers.
With stickers?
But there's already a hand.
Okay, there's already a hand. Yeah.
My question is, when you did the term, did you have enough people to basically put a specialist in every pillar? So you have the moms team and whatever. Everybody needs a marketing team, a marketing person. I'm not sure if you have eight marketing events and so on. Or if you have to recruit new people, or
you really have. Sagst du.
Okay. Actually, it was really practical because we didn't have enough people, and that's why we needed to generalize functions. And then it turned out for us that actually that is one of the key levers for cross-functional teams, that you cannot have 3 different marketing positions in one team, because then also the team gets huge. Because if you have each marketing functionality inside every team, then the team with our base functions at that time would have been 14 people, and there would have been exactly 1 developer, which is definitely not enough. So we would not have had enough people, but
a tangible example would be we had a retention specialist who did the emailing, and he really got more responsibility, also doing the online marketing and additional marketing.
We also had 3 development teams, front end, back end, and JavaScript, and JavaScript and front end was merged after talks with the people. Because, I'm not going to say it. Lots of JavaScript people know markup, and lots of markup people want to know JavaScript. So it gives both a broader perspective, and actually everybody now does it.
Next question. We do have that, and it has happened. So I'm always a little bit torn, because every time you have team changes, they go through a new phase, like the norming, storming, performing, and so there is disruption. But in general, we are totally open to that. So if somebody says we want to change, that's totally fine for us if it makes sense. We also had the opposite, that we thought it makes sense that somebody changed team, or that we move something around, and then the people decided, no, we don't want to change, which made us a little bit sad, because it was rather for personal reasons than for business reasons, but it happens. And then we had also one change which we really introduced ourselves, where we said, okay, the team needs additional resources now because the season is coming, a new topic isn't working yet fully, so it makes sense to combine the forces into one team.
Yeah, at the beginning we also thought a lot about, before we actually did the switch, do we have to have a process for how to change teams? And luckily we realized that we just wait for it to come up, and then we fix it by person instead of coming up with a process for it again.
Yeah. And today somebody came up to me and asked if there would be the option to change. I'll tell you later. What?
No,
no.
Yeah.
Not again.
How many people did not follow your process?
You mean before or now?
My question was, how many people left your process?
Yeah, actually, it's a good question, because honestly, what you read when you read about those kind of changes, that roughly 25% will have to go or go by themselves. And so far, I would say 1.5% or something. I mean, really a low number, something which also scares us slightly, because it either means we recruited before very well, or some positions are too comfortable for people to stay even though they don't like it. So because it just doesn't really add up. But right now it was like natural leaving, like people want to move to other countries, or moving because of another opportunity or something.
And also 2 to 3 people who didn't feel the environment was right for them as well.
Yeah. But really a low amount of people.
And
Yeah?
Ask me later. Goes too far.
Yeah, first, 5th row, 4th row, yeah, you, yes.
How do you do communication or knowledge transfer between teams? Because, for instance, when it comes to software development, you don't want to have the teams reinvent the wheel all the time.
I focus on the always, because it's always a compromise, right? And the compromise should rather be, and that was a big discussion we had at the beginning with the tech teams, the compromise should rather be on individual autonomous teams than to have never doing something twice, right? So it's always the question where you have the slider. But to answer your question, chapters. So what they do is really down to earth. For an example, pair programming and code reviews happen across squads. They happen inside the chapter. So since we don't have teams or repositories per teams, but actually rather an internal open source philosophy, meaning that every squad has to work into the repository of the shop. What they have is simply that the backend chapter then, we have a simple rule, every pull request needs three reviews, one by Jenkins, one inside squad, and one inside the chapter, so across squad. And that's how they do knowledge transfer mainly. Also when there is a bigger topic, like when there's an architectural question, they discuss it cross squad inside the chapter. They have once a week a chapter meeting where they gather in between 10 minutes and 3 hours, depending on how many topics there are.
In the hip chat discussion groups.
I mean, of course, yeah, there's hip chat going on. And then about communication, rather not so focused on chapter. More or less at the time of squads and all that stuff, we also introduced Workplace, Facebook for work. And it was first a big question mark, especially by the tech people. And now I would say almost everybody loves it because it really helps in a situation like this because you don't have any top-down information flow anymore. It's rather teams informing other teams of their reviews, etc.
So in my former company, we had daily, like really company dailies. But if you work on such different topics, it's really not worth it. So I think the biggest improvement was the Workplace because every team posts review results. So if you're interested in it, you can read it, but it doesn't cost as much time as really going to a review meeting, listening to it, and you can like it, you can ask questions, you can comment it. And so in terms of exchange within the teams, that's one tool which was the biggest improvement because it gives you so many opportunities.
One of my favorite examples from Workplace was actually how do we decide who goes to what conference? I mean, not as a speaker, but as a attendee. And it's always a big question of developers, right? Often even asked in recruiting, like, do you pay for conferences and how often can I go? And we always said, like, it really doesn't make sense to come up with a process because for one person it makes more sense to go to 2 conferences, while for another person it doesn't make sense to go at all. And who decides that? Now the team decides that. They have a group in Workplace. Anybody can say, I would like to go to this conference because of this and that, and I would actually expect this and that person to come with me, and then it's being challenged by the team if it really makes sense, if that conference is the best or conference is best to tackle that topic at all, and they decided together, and it's better than anything we ever had before.
Why you go there? Was it recommended to you? What value do you draw from it, and what value do you draw also for the company from it? So there are certain criteria you have to ask yourself, and then maybe by answering these questions, you already realize maybe there's a better conference for me.
There was a question somewhere further back. Yeah.
You said that you're experimenting with like a platform team or something. Do you have any idea how to solve the problems that you had with the infrastructure teams?
Yeah, we hope we do.
Otherwise, it would be very stupid to do it again.
Yeah, it was actually a big fight in my mind, especially since we're talking about it. Like, are we honest to ourselves, or are we just trying to solve a new problem with an old answer? And I think so far I can say no. It's really different than because. The main difference is that the team has a purpose, and the team, so as a vision in my mind, it's an internal software as a service, which at some point actually can really charge the other teams, the customer teams, with their product. Like, really big picture speaking, Amazon Web Services, right? So internal product being marketed just in order for you to be competitive. And they can really focus on their vision. And it's very important because before they had an externally determined backlog, and that would be the huge difference. So customers, meaning the customer squads, should be talked to, but they don't write stories, and then the product platform team does it in a priority they think, but they really come up like this typical example, listen to the customer, but don't listen to the customer. So they might want some very specific stuff, and then the platform team says, okay, I think our customers need a feature like this and that, and then they will develop that. But they have to, they take the ownership for the platform then and for the internal software.
And I also think that the infrastructure team was it was just everything.
Yeah, catch all.
Yeah. So you couldn't really focus on the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And that's the difference now.
Yeah, my question was just when I'm looking at the
Watch.
page, is this then really that every section is a window to a specific team? Also when I see you have your Geburtstagskarte so there behind, it's all under the responsibility of mom's team or what?
Yeah. Yeah. Right? I mean, in its boundaries, right? So it's still the same web shop. So it's still the same server. It's not that they have...
Common patterns.
Yeah, right. So it's still the same software. It's still the same repository, and everything is still the same. But yes, they own everything from banners to what products and what formats they build, what features. Mostly the features are then also used by the other squads. Yeah, of course. But it's...
Some customers need it more than others.
Right. So we're right now experimenting, for example, with a different category page for wedding customers, which is then just switched on exactly in that category, and different PDP, so more mobile inspirational, PDP, product detail page, company internal speech sometimes. So that might happen as well.
So every category you find there has a team behind it. So they are, like, even the little communion category belongs to the moms, and they own it. They have to make sure it's up to date, and the conversion rate doesn't suddenly explode. Well, exploding would be nice, but...
Who actually owns envelopes? I'm not sure.
Envelopes?
Yeah, I'm not sure. But normally,
but it's not a customer group.
Right, we're not selling them, we're just cross-selling them.
Yeah.
So, yeah. If you go through the menu, you have a one-to-one link category to squad. Yeah.
And what I realized that the need really comes from the customer. For example, that the need that you design your card totally by yourself and you can move text fields and everything. That's more the wedding, the recently engaged who want to do something special on their card. While if I celebrate my 40th birthday, it's like...
I just want to get it done.
I just want to get a card, put my picture in, it should look really nice, and there should be a 40 on it, but I don't need this feature. However, like, the others can test it if it's if it makes sense for the other customers as well. So they will profit from what they developed and take it.
Yep. Yeah, you were, sorry, yes. You handle it, right?
How much did the value output increase?
You can answer that.
Because you made a lot of changes, and I hope there is
I mean,
I wish that we are on a good track now in terms of growth again, but can you really tie this back to our completely new team setup? I think there
it goes down to gut feeling. I mean, it's the same question before. Everybody who really tells me that in a company like ours you can attach a business value to a story before you even implement it. I mean, it's just a gut feeling, and it's just like some kind of business case being calculated in order for you to prioritize your topic higher or lower, right? So the whole company is moving in a very positive momentum in lots of I would say non-intermediate drivers. So less people leaving, higher motivation, and if you trust any literature out there, then that always leads to a higher business impact, right? So and that's in the end what you somehow have to trust, and all the numbers are going in the direction. Is there a mathematical connection between one and the other? Can't tell you, but I can only assume it.
It looks right, but if you take into consideration that we were in a big relaunch phase beforehand, where our growth stagnated because we were working on our new front end, So that's not the right number to compare to. And the other thing is we also invested heavily at the beginning of this year to increase our market leadership. So we increased in marketing as well while changing the teams. So now there's not always a direct connection, but I really believe that we improved it. At least if I...
Right?
Maybe I should ask differently.
Yeah.
Like, are there more features being delivered for the customer?
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Quicker.
Yeah.
So we increased in speed. We can still increase even more, but already. Yeah. And also more customers are served with value. Because before that we were all running in one direction and then we in the other direction. So while we were really working, focused on Christmas, some other customers were neglected. And now there's, due to the clear responsibility, there's more focus and deeper understanding on the customer groups. And therefore also value, because the moms need something totally different than
we're running
wedding.
out of time. Last question. Yeah.
They can decide a lot of things. What about the salary? Are they negotiating?
Great topic.
We're working
we
on it
just
now.
came out of a 4-hour workshop working. We're working on a salary formula right now. And to have transparent and clear salary evaluated levels by team. Because in the end, you can't have a chapter lead, which we still have, evaluating then its team because he doesn't work with them on a daily basis. So yeah, there comes a lot of cross links to other things, which you then realize you have kind of organizational legacy. Mm-hmm. But we're working on one thing at a step. Basically.
And one final note. There are a lot of things you're suddenly missing because you changed to self-organized teams. Mm-hmm. So structures who were before clear, like who do I go to if I want to develop? Who do I go to? And like the system has to be readjusted to serve also our customer needs, our colleagues' needs.
There's
so we've been, during the last year, we've been working to give answers how we do it differently now.
There's a good quote from somebody at Spotify. If you need to know exactly who takes a decision, you're at the wrong place. Yeah. So, yes, thank you. Right?
Yeah.